Well, here we are again. As you can see, we're going to talk a little bit about Node.js, NPM. And I wouldn't have always went this way. Matter of fact, there's so much stuff anymore with programming from the old days. It's hard to know where to start. So I'm just going to dump some stuff out here, some tools we'll be using. And there's so many pieces. I still don't understand all the pieces, but we'll get them installed. And then as you grow, you'll learn more and more about what each piece of the tools are doing. So Node.js and NPM. Let's get to where you can see the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and throw a command prompt up just so I have it there. Not using it yet. In your web browser, I'm firing up Chrome there. We have other videos on this and tons of resources on YouTube or anywhere else about downloading it. But download Node.js. I think in one of my about 2 lessons ago recently, I mentioned get that installed so you'll have it. So you go to Node.js, you find the right one for your machine and your architecture, 32-bit or 64-bit, you install it. And we mentioned in that video, a couple of videos back, that once you have Node installed, you should be able to go like node-version, and it will tell you, hey, you got this version. And that shows you that it's installed, it's in your path, and everything's working like you'd hope. Now, I don't know that we mentioned this at all. I can't recall, but something that's installed with that is NPM, if I'm not mistaken. As soon as it's installed, it's available. So I can type NPM and enter, and you're going to see that's in my path, and I can use this. And what this is, if you haven't heard of it, is a package manager is what it is. And if you're not familiar with that, in the old days we had dependencies. We still have dependencies. Those are things your program needs. Might be called artifacts, big fancy words other guys use sometimes. But when you need these, maybe they're DLLs, files, config files, whatever it might be. In the old days, you had to have a folder and share among developers, and it was tough when each developer was trying to work on the same thing, keeping organized and getting them all. These package managers make it very easy to have them in a single location, version controlled. Each developer can check out code. It will grab the right versions, save space. They don't have to have it or check those into the source control. There's a common place, one place everybody grabs from. On and on it goes. NuGet is another one, N-U-G-E-T. If you do C# or .NET type coding, you'll use that package manager. And when you're doing JavaScript type or Node type programming, front-end programming, you'll be using NPM a lot. So when it comes to NPM, part of this too, there's so much here, it's so exciting, but part of this is taking advantage of what other people have done. Instead of rebuilding the wheel, if somebody's already made a picker that works, or this that works, or that works, we don't need to be recoding it and recoding it. This is a way for people to share and not be redoing the same things. Now, one of the commands in NPM is to list what packages you have installed. And I haven't installed any right here, and I haven't created a project or anything, but let's look here. If I go npm list, it's basically going to show me empty. I'm not finding anything. But there's a thing called installing packages globally. And again, I'm not going to go in detail. I don't know a lot about it, but tons of resources. Search on npm, take other lessons, but you can install globally, and every project has access to that. It's almost like the GAC, or the Global Assembly Cache. If you're a .NET, you're making it available. Or it's almost like, if you will, putting it in your path for NPM. Everything has access to it if it's installed globally. And this is that nerdy, clunky learning parameters. And remember, we talked about getting help, /? or -h. Something will show you the help. But I can say, hey, I want to list globally what's there. Let me go ahead and try that one. This is going to be ugly, I have a feeling. And then we'll add another complicated command. See that it's just showing me all kind of, well, it showed me a bunch here. That's stuff that's installed. And then there's a few issues. But what I really want is what we're going to call the depth or the top level. It's amazing how much stuff depends on other stuff. It just cascades down. If you install, and I think I only have installed 4 or 5 things here, all of those have installed some of the other things you saw there. But so I'm going to say, hey, show me the global things, but I only want to use this parameter of depth 0, top level. What did I actually install? Now let's look at this. And it's taking a second. Let me get up above, and there we are. Look at this. If you're focusing in there, I have installed what's called vue-cli. There's a service. There's a few other things here. TypeScript at one point and Yarn. So those are the things that already my machine has access to. Now, I'm taking you down a path you might not want to go, but Vue, for front-end development, there's 3 big ones you've probably been hearing of. Angular, there's React, and there's Vue. And there's arguments for which one you want to use, but one of my guys chose Vue, and that's kind of the angle we took. So I'll probably be focusing on Vue many times. And the CLI, that might be a new term to some too, is command line interface. When you're dealing with a command front end like this, not a GUI, you're able to run commands. That's called a CLI, the command line interface. So when you're dealing with Vue programming, Vue, it's nice to have this CLI installed. Gives you some commands and power and things. So you can see I've already got it. And for my examples to work, you'll either want to get that installed globally or at least installed on each project you're working in. So let's try this. If I say npm install at vue/CLI, let's see what happens here. Oh, I didn't put my global command on there. So that could make a mess on me. Let me go ahead and terminate there. Take a directory. There's probably so much of a mess I'm not going to find it. Let's say npm install globally vue-cli. See what happens here. It's going to be doing a bunch of stuff. And you'll see how packages become deprecated, and sometimes they'll find security flaws, and these tools will tell you these things. So once that's installed, you should get, basically no error. And if you ran that command that we ran earlier, your machine should show that, hey, vue-cli is installed on my computer. There, I'm getting some of that junk at the end, but once again, it's there. Now, what you can do with that, let's get to cracking now. I like to have, or I have a Vue folder on my computer. So you might want to pick or make a folder somewhere where you're going to work on your projects. And what you can do, let's try this. I'll bet I should put version on here is what I should do probably. I'll bet if I just type Vue, I'm going to get a command. No, good. It's just giving help. It didn't go into like a terminal type thing or anything. But so with Vue, what I want to do is in my main folder where I'm going to do projects, we might make, and this is specific to Vue. If you're doing npm itself, you're doing npm install things. But if you have the Vue CLI, you can create projects like Vue create, and let's say, let's think of one here, my program. We're going to Vue create my program. And you're going to see a bunch of new tools and terms maybe if you've not done this before. So look, it's showing you command line interface. Pick a preset. It's talking about Vue and Babel and Lint or Vue 3. Well, we're going back to Vue 2. The older version, if you will, or the maybe I don't know if I should say currently supported, but Vue 3 is newer and things of that nature. But it's showing you we're going to use Vue 2, we're going to use Babel for compiling or putting our packages together, and we're using ESLint. There's different terms, like lint is the concept of checking for errors, little problems in your code and trying to fix it, if you haven't heard that. So, yep, we're going to go with the default, hit enter, creating a project. Look at that, in that folder, what I called it, making a my program, initializing Git. If you haven't worked with Git repositories, we will be doing that in future, but it's even initializing a Git repository with your code, so you can be checking in and out code and eventually shove it to a remote repository of code. Look at that, we're even getting vulnerabilities, but it even tells you, look at that, you got to change into your directory and then run the command. Even as you use this after a while, sometimes you'll forget to do that. But so we will change into the new folder it just made, and we're going to npm run serve. Now, if I'm not mistaken, remember we talked about web servers, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, the Webpack kind of development server that you will use with npm. You don't have to use IS Express. You don't have to use the real IS. You don't have to install Apache or a Tomcat or anything. You can have the server functionality you need to develop right here with that command, npm run serve. Watch this. Now this is development mode. We're not building, we're just running it in a development mode here. And while that's running, I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, and we're going to get ready for our browser. Hey, it's already beat us. Look at that. We're popping our browser up, and it's telling us, hey, the web server I'm using, not default port 80, it's using 8080. So I have to do localhost 8080. And let's see what happens here. Boom, look at that. I already have a Vue web app up, and looks like I've been programming, doesn't it, a little bit, but the app is up and running. So now what we'll do is I'm going to use VS Code or Visual Studio Code. We looked at that in the last lesson or two, and to do that, I'm going to leave my one command window up there with the web server running. I'm going to pop another command window up, and I'm going to change into that folder that I had of the program. So we're in our program now, and if you recall from way back in, it was code space dot that fired up Visual Studio Code. That's the executable or the command that launches code, and bam, we should get it up and start seeing some things. And so this, if this is the first time you're seeing some folders or things you're not used to maybe, but look at node modules is one of the folders that made. And when you run npm and install packages and things, this is the folder that it throws those in. So that's what that big mess is all your npm packages you installed or that came with the CLI and on and on and on. So we'll close that. You can see there's a public folder here, and that's kind of the root, maybe, if you will, of your public web, where it has, if you will, artifacts like a favorite icon and the index.html, the main page of the website or server. And then there's a source folder, and that's where the magic happens. That's where your job is in this source folder. And when it comes to Vue, we use what are called components, and it has a component folder. This one has made an asset folder. Looks like more artifacts there. But we have here a main. Look at that. That's JavaScript, JS. Let me blow that up a little bit, make that a little better. But there's main.js. Now, I'm not going to do it today, but we are going to simply say like Vue add TypeScript in a future lesson, and just introduce TypeScript right off the bat, because especially someone that does not even yet know JS, we might as well just take the big leap and go TypeScript. But we won't do that yet today. We'll just stick with our JavaScript stuff. And then you can see, there's the Babel. Remember it talked about Babel and having it help us build or compile or transpile our code and things. That's there. And a package JSON file. I don't recall if we'd talked yet or not, but you may have heard of XML. I'm trying to think of some of the other formats there, but JSON is JavaScript object notation. And if that's new to you, you're going to be seeing it all the time. It's this squiggly left bracket, and like the name of a property and a colon and the value, and objects can have sub-objects, and it's really amazing. JSON, it's all over the place. And APIs will usually return JSON or XML or a format similar to that. I prefer JSON, but you're going to be bumping into that if you haven't. That is JSON. And this package JSON is kind of the config file with NPM and or Vue that it's showing you what package you have installed and what versions and things of that. Pretty much pre-built as we install things, and we might make some tweaks on that as we do things, but that's what the package JSON file does for you. Well, let's look at that main. And again, this is specific to Vue. You wouldn't have to make any of these things, and we might come back next lesson and do just a simple indexed file and a JavaScript file or something. But out of the box, when your app fires up, a Vue app, it has this JavaScript that starts the magic. And this started around 2015, newer versions of JavaScript. You can import and export and treat things like classes. If you're old school and haven't brushed up in the last half a decade or more, this stuff will be new to you. But it's literally saying, hey, in this JavaScript, I want to import from these other files or folders. And here's some kind of Vue property. But basically, all it does then is say, hey, a new Vue object, and it's saying render it, and it's got passing some parameters here, and it's .mount and things. Whew. Now I realize there's so much, if you are truly new to programming and don't know, this is called like a selector. How to find that on your page. It's saying find something with the ID of app, and that's where it's telling it to render your app. And this again is a newer notation from around 2015 of JavaScript of how you can have a function or variable and then pass it in or use it. So we'll get into that as we go on. But what this does, it turns out, is the app itself, app.vue, viewfiles.vue, you're going to find in here, I'm thinking, what was it again? It was the app ID. Let's go look at that. We should find an app ID. Boom, there it is. See that? In your Vue components, if you will, you're going to find three things. I guess you can see me still there, can't you? Three things. You're going to find a template. You're going to find a script section. And if you need it, you're going to find a style section. That's the three pieces of a Vue component: templates, scripts, and styles. So in our HTML, we have that base ID of where our app is going to go. Now look here. Let's see. Let me shrink it. But there's a source of a logo. There's a hello message. Let's shrink and look at this. See over here. Here's where it's being rendered, and you have that Vue logo right there. That's how it's happening. And then it's calling a subcomponent that's doing all this work down here. Isn't that neat? And we've had to, if you will, import that other one. And he's up here somewhere. Look, components. There he is. In him, template, HTML, all those links. He's going to have a script, and he has to export himself so the other guy can get a hold of him. And he even had some of his own styling there. Let's go back to app view. But we're seeing the basics of how this works. And that's not a valid HTML tag. What in the world's going on there? H1, page, div, break. Well, it turns out components, once you, if you will, register them or have them created properly and then imported, Vue lets you call that as if though it were like an HTML tag. It's amazing. Pass in parameters and that component does its job. And we'll be getting into that. Now I'm going to do one other crazy thing before we leave today. Since we are aiming at a fairly newbie, if we started right off in these templates and stuff, it's kind of confusing how things are buried underneath. So I'm going to do something no normal human would ever do. I'm going back to our index.html page. Okay, let me zoom in on that so you can see what's going on here. But that is a normal HTML page. And there's a no script tag that if the person doesn't have a newer browser, it's going to give them an error. And there's your div ID. If everything's right, you know, Vue is going to load up and fill in that app. We can, and again, you would probably never do this unless you were sneaking a logo or something on the main index page, but I can put a thing here like, hi, I am working here. I'm going to hit save, and you're going to see something neat here. As soon as I hit save, watch this. Look at that. Bam, over here. And that's one of the neat things about Vue and these reactive type pages, kind of polling and checking. And immediately, I didn't even have to refresh. There's that code, but we can kind of cheat. I didn't try this earlier. Let me try this and see what happens here. Might get an error. I highlighted that and I hit Control-K-C, and that's called remarking or commenting out code. I'm going to hit save. Let's see if I get an error or, okay, I was kind of hoping that's what happened. It just disappeared. The div to let me put that back in case I had that on the other screen and you actually weren't seeing it. Let me hit save here, and yeah, right there you can see I've got that Vue logo and stuff over there and the I am here. But as soon as I rim that out and hit Control-K-C, let me shrink this so as soon as I hit save you'll see it here. Now as soon as I hit save, it disappears. So to save complexity, at least for now, we're not going to dig down in the Vue components and work with JavaScript there. We're going to tinker a little bit up here. Oh, where was it? Index. And just do some normal stuff. And then we'll get back down in the components and try to learn. So hopefully, if you don't know, you might want to brush up on some HTML stuff like tags, H1, headings, and the pages, and divs, and spans, and bolds, and italics, and on and on and on. You might look into that. And there's form controls or forms themselves. Like there are input controls, like a text box. There's like a input type of hidden. You've probably studied that. And there's, I believe, checkbox. And there's radio. There's a radio type. And there's what are buttons. And let me go ahead and hit save, just see what happens here. See, we're getting a text box. We're getting my checkbox. What happened to my hidden one? Well, it's hidden. See, that was a joke. That was a computer joke. But there's a button, hi, I click it. Nothing happens. Well, you can add, just like there's a no script, you can just add a script tag. It should default to JavaScript, and I can declare a function, and we'll just say yell at me. Oops, see daisy. Yell at me, an open bracket and close bracket, and I'll just do an alert. Hey, man. Okay, and when, well, let me click my button. Is he going to yell at me? Nope. I need to put the event. I need to tie it, don't I? I need to say, hey, when you click, yell at me. And so let's see what happens. Click, boom, hey, man. Hopefully you're seeing that there. So probably next lesson, we'll probably stop for today. We'll probably tinker maybe a little bit here, look at classes and importing and just some of those things. And then we will start applying that down into these components that add with Vue a little bit of complexity. Well, I hope that didn't confuse you. Jumping right into all those tools, but whew, there's so much stuff, you just got to jump in. What do they say? Baptized by fire, right? But I hope it was clear that we installed Node.js, which also installed the NPM tool, package management. We made the choice, or I did, of using Vue versus React or Angular. And we went ahead and installed vue-cli globally. And Vue created a project. Instead of doing like an npm create, Vue create the project. We went in there, we seen some of the pieces of how Node modules, when you add packages, they go to Node modules. We seen what was specific to Vue, how there's the main.js and then the app.vue, and how Vue makes component folders. And we just kind of poked around in there, and we saw the Babel config and package JSON, and we saw JSON, the JavaScript object notation type thing. And then at the very end, after we beat you up like that, it's almost like learning calculus or learn a little bit. And then at the end, they show you a cheat on an integral. It's like, well, you don't have to do all that. Look at this. Well, we could have just made an index.html and a JS page and started doing stuff. But this is good stuff. You've learned all these tools. You've seen, bam, today, before you've maybe even learned, if you're truly a newbie, you're wired up and ready to start making an app. But now we're going to take a pause, learn maybe some skills in case you don't have some programming background, and then we'll jump back in and take that thing we've already wired up and start making it do something. So I hope it was beneficial. Hope you'll come back, and hopefully my logic doesn't mess you up. Hopefully you can kind of see a flow to what we're trying to do and learn here.